Okay, Pascal, this week we are going to talk about an American werewolf in London. Now, earlier, one of the news items was that Taco Moon campaign, with the moon actually grafted into the London Eye. So a lovely little teaser there. But we actually did discuss this in that Twitter space yesterday, because one of the conversations that we had in the Twitter space was, which film shall we review within this part of the show? Now, this is the 40th episode of the podcast, and therefore we've talked about 40 films. So we actually specifically wanted to talk about a film today that's 40 years old. And we came up with a list of films. Excalibur was one. Clash of the Titans was another. American Werewolf in London got the popular vote within that Twitter space that we were in.
It did, so there we are. All the others, including Raiders of the Lost Ark and a few others, will eventually be mentioned and covered in film marketing. But American Werewolf in London, I remember seeing the trailers and the teaser content on French TV. At the time I was probably 12 or 13 and being petrified. And I don't think I saw the movie till much, much later, using one of my friends, a kind of a dodgy copy on a VHS cassette.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I didn't go to the cinema to see this because I think I was probably too young, and it did have a X certificate in those days.
Yeah.
But even when I did finally see it on VHS, it is actually quite a scary film. It's that transformation sequence where the guy becomes the werewolf is, it was done. There was no CGI in those days. It was all done with animatronics. I can't even say that word. It was all done with effectively masks and fake skin and fake hair, and it was all
practical
physical,
effects by Rick Baker.
Yeah.
And really for him, what an achievement, which was recognized for the very first time at the Oscars when he won the Oscar for Best, lead special effects.
Yeah. The thing that to this day, and I watch this film quite regularly, is one of my favourite films. And my wife and I watched this quite recently, maybe only about 3 months ago. It's such a good sequence where he transforms into the werewolf. But it actually looks as if it hurts. It's so convincing that his transformation, you think, this is not an enjoyable experience this guy's going through here.
It's just incredible. And we must remind everybody that in 1981, 40 years ago, the audiences, movie audiences, and then later on, obviously, video cassette audiences, had never seen a transformation scene. In the past, there was almost like a crossfade effect, or there was cutaways. But also importantly, usually whatever attempt in the past in movies for transformation were done in a dark setting.
Yes.
And John Landis gave himself the challenge, or should we say Rick Baker and his team, the challenge of this will be done with full line. This will be done in an apartment well lit, and we're going to see everything, so we can't cheat.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. Now, Pascal, it's obviously a horror film. It's very gory. There's a lot of blood in it, and the special effects and the gore are tip top. But it's almost like it's a comedy as well, isn't it? Some of it is incredibly dark humour, but it is a funny film as well as being a horror film.
But I think that's where horror movies work better, where there's released. But also, if you look at John Landis and his work, he's really the master of comedy. I would say, thanks to John, the 80s have been a wonderful era. From Coming to America, 1988, going back to Three Amigos, a very special film for you, Richard and I. You had Treading Places back with Eddie Murphy. But of course, the reason why he was allowed finally to make the American Werewolf in London is because he really proved his worth as a director with the Blues Brothers in 1980.
Yeah. And this film has so many sequences that stick in your mind. There's a dream within a dream sequence early on in the film, which is really quite frightening. And the first time I saw that was like, oh my goodness. Obviously the transformation effect that we've said earlier on, that was remarkable as well. But then later in the film, when the werewolf goes on the rampage around Piccadilly Circus,
that's incredible.
Buses crashing into cars and cars going off off the side of the road and people being bitten in half and stuff like that. It's really quite spectacular in its goriness, isn't it?
I think and it feels like a complex movie to make. That makes any sense. And of course, it was made in winter, just to be mean to all your actors. The actors that plays obviously the character of David Kessler, who is the one that is transforming little by little into a werewolf through bad dreams and eventually full transformation, and has been haunted by the ghost of his friend Jack Goodman, who was the first victim in the moors. But he was told, there's a scene when you watch the special DVD documentary where he was told to run around in the woods pretty much naked. And John Landis said, you look a bit tense and stiff. I said, no, I'm just cold. This is March in Wales and you want me to run around in the woods naked. So I think it was a complex film. You mentioned the Piccadilly Circus sequence. This would have taken so much planning and so much, obviously, participation from extras and the police as well, that again, from a production point of view, John Landis really pushed the boat out on this one.
Yeah, and Jack Goodman, again, you said the first victim. One of the things that really, I mean, again, it's gory, but he keeps coming back. He's killed early on in the movie, but he keeps haunting David Kessler to try to get him to kill himself before he turns into this werewolf. And of course, the first time he comes back as a ghost, I guess, he's a fresh corpse, isn't he? He's got his skin's been pulled off his face. You can see parts of his skull, but he's bright red because of all the blood. But every time after that he comes back again and haunts David Kessler, his body's decomposed a bit more until the final time he appears towards the end of the film, he's all green and sort of oozing with maggots and stuff. I mean, it's absolutely gross, but they do it so well. And again, he's got that tongue-in-cheek sort of American scamp glint in his eye, even when his body's falling apart. That is good black humour.
Very much so. And bear in mind that at the time, there was another movie that was trying to obviously attract audiences in and around the themes of werewolf, which was The Howling.
Yes. Now, I can't actually recall much about The Howling. I've definitely read the book. I don't recall the film of The Howling, so I can't in my head remember either seeing it or if I did, it obviously didn't compare very favourably to this.
The Howling is fine. It's just a more straightforward story, and there isn't the humour. It's just obviously the victims and people being chased around by a werewolf who actually stands on his hind legs, so it's more of a bipedal werewolf. And John Landis insisted that this would be more a wolf, using four legs,
wolf.
To add to the tension in terms of who's going to break through the box office. John Landis actually wrote the original screenplay for American Werewolf in London in 1969. Can you imagine that?
Wow!
Whilst he was working, helping out on Kelly's Heroes, right. And in between, so back to creativity. In between, being busy helping out, he was just jotting down some notes, and he promised Rick Baker that Rick would get the gig in doing the special effects. But of course, time goes by. Rick Baker doesn't hear much more, so he agrees to actually be the special effects guy on The Howling. Soon after, as is always the case in life, he gets a phone call from Rick Baker saying, "We're ready. We need you to work on American Werewolf in London." So Rick Baker remained as a consultant on The Howling, but one of his colleagues worked on the film, and he could dedicate all his time and effort, which was required. You can imagine some of the most complex special effects took 6 hours to put on the poor actors.
Gosh. And again, there are some very iconic UK actors in this film.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard of David Norton and Griffin Dunn, who played the Americans, but from the UK's point of view, we have Jenny Agutter, who she was in Logan's Run. That's the other big role that she'd had. I mean, I am sure that at that point when this film came out, I had a massive crush on Jenny Agutter. She was the go-to female co-star, wasn't she? But also shout-outs for John Woodvine, who plays the Doctor. I mean, he's a character actor. He's been in loads of UK TV series like the aforementioned Doctor Who. I think he was in Z-Cars and that sort of thing. Brian Glover, who's the bald guy in the pub who tells the joke about throwing people out of the plane, which probably is a little bit bordering on politically incorrect these days, but he's very well done in the actual film. And again, massive character actor who's been in all sorts of things like EastEnders and Coronation Street and that sort of thing. So again, it's one of those films where you can spot people who went on to greater things. And of course, another thing is the soundtrack.
Yes.
I think John Landis must have said, go out there and find me any song that's got the word moon in the title. So Bad Moon Rising by Creedence Clearwater Revival, Blue Moon by Bobby Vinto, Moon Dance by Van Morrison, and many others.
And what is interesting is John Landis did actually ask Elmer Bernstein to do the more of the background music, which actually for the dream sequences or when the tension is building is really, really good and is so memorable as well as the songs. I mean, like you, I discovered for the first time a Creedence Clearwater Revival and became a fan ever since. But hey, 1981, Roger, it's the year of MTV. And John Landis knows his audience. And of course, he's going to do things like this because he just brings a unique identity to the film, of course.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a stroke of genius, the music. The soundtrack was just incredible. So what about the marketing? I mean, the strapline of the film was Beware the Moon.
Yeah. Now, the marketing is mixed and confused, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, the John Landis, up to that point, track record is around comedy films. The Kentucky Fried Movie, I don't know if you've ever seen that one, Roger, but it's actually very funny and very cleverly put together criticism of the society of the time, National Lampoon's Animal House, Blues Brothers, and so on. So when the movie was first released, and we'll talk in a moment about the different ways in which they teased the audience, but the announcement for the distributors was, a movie from the director of National Lampoon's Animal House. People were brilliant. Let's go and watch a comedy. And we're absolutely horrified, of course, when they sat and watched American Werewolf, because there is elements of comedy, but it is first and foremost a horror film.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think they got it a bit wrong there. Although the trailers were pretty good, weren't they? You get snippets of the monster, snippets of the makeup and the transformation sequences. Not enough to make you want to see it, but not enough to ruin the surprise.
Yeah, which is very clever. So they began with a 60-second teaser, which frankly must have been filmed really at the very start of the production, just to get the appetite of distributors, or maybe sometime, as is often the case, secure more finances as you started the project. And what you get in the space of 50 seconds is a scene taking place in the woods at night. You get a sense that's the case. The camera kind of shifts slowly to the ground where the full moon is reflecting on a pool of water, and then suddenly blood just takes over. And then at the right time, you get a quick growl, a quick kind of mass getting past the camera we imagine to be the werewolf, and then the title, American Werewolf in London, is so almost like a project or film teaser that was made before the film. Then you've got a 30-second teaser for TV, then the 90-second kind of trailer out there. But also what they did really, really well, and they were working and playing to these special effects. There was so many, certainly on French TV for me, there was so many reports about the amazing technical achievement. And so for me, I saw the scene in the underground as a bit of a teaser trailer, and we saw bits of the transformation, which scared the bejesus out of me, as we've mentioned before. And of course, part of what they did there was to, again, play to the different parts and facets of the movie.
I think that was one of the most scary parts of the film, was that guy being chased through the underground. I mean, the underground at that time was totally deserted. It was quite late at night. Now, most people associate the underground with crowds and crowds and crowds of people, but imagine that you're in an underground station on your own, and all of a sudden a gigantic werewolf hops up onto the platform. Oh my goodness. And that guy just ran for his life up the escalator. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. That was a gripping scene, an absolutely gripping scene.
It was just well put together. So when it comes to the marketing, once the movie is released, they went onto what I was called at the time this publicity junket. This was a British and American production, Roger. So, of course, they did tour a lot of Europe, including Germany, who's a big market for horror films.
Yes.
And claim to fame, I think Rick Baker was asked to improvise a bit of a special makeup workshop for the journalists because they were just so in awe of his talent.
Yeah, and this isn't really a marketing thing, but they had a bit of fun in the credits as well, didn't they, of the film? The bit about all characters in the... it says something, all characters and events in this film are fictitious. Any similarity to actual events or persons, living, dead or undead, is purely coincidental. I just love that sort of thing. Perhaps nobody would have noticed that, but the fact that they made the effort to put that in the credits is just joyous.
But what happened then? The fans talk about it 40 years later, which has been true. I mean, this year there would be 40th anniversary screenings all around the world. Even with the lockdown measures in America, for example, they are doing drive-in screenings of American Werewolf in London. I'm sure they'll be the same all over Europe and other countries where the movie has done really, really well. The other thing that reminded me about the closing credits, typical John Landis because of his background in doing comedy films, but there was also wishing the very best to Princess Diana and Prince Charles on their wedding because that was the year. Now, people are a little kind of surprised about this, but there is an uncut version of the movie where the character of David Norton runs around, I think, London at some stage and calls Prince Charles a faggot. And John Landis going to real trouble with that. So he said, no, we're big fans. It's just a character, not me. So just to reassure viewers in England in particular that John Landis was pro-British, he put that extra message at the end as well.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. Wow. I mean, again, we really do pick some classic films to talk about, and this one ticks so many different boxes: dialogue, direction, obviously, makeup, special effects, physical effects, just absolutely incredible. It's always a joy to talk about these films, Pascal. I just get so excited reliving all the memories that these films just generate. But we'll have to bring things to a close once again. So thank you everyone so much for watching the show. Thank you for listening to the show. We really do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen. If you've got any comments or anything, leave them below the video or hit us up on Twitter, wherever you consume your podcasts. Get in touch with us and let us know what you think of the show. And of course, if there's any films that you'd like us to talk about. Pascal, thank you so much once again for being my companion on Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. Until next time, get out there and make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Roger Edwards and he was Pascal Fintoni.